right, everybody. I have no idea why the intro music decided not to play. It's showing like a weird, I didn't download this thing tonight icon in the sidebar. So whoopee, the internet is wonderful. It loves me. As you all know, technology loves me this year, 2025, the year of love. This is the This Week in Science podcast broadcast. As you well know, if you watch this show, this is the part of the show where I tell you this is not the show yet. This is the pre-show. This is where I tell you that the show is coming. And to please like, subscribe, do all the sharing because the show's about to start. We will make mistakes. The computers won't work. Technology doesn't do the thing that we want it to all the time. Edits will be made. Those edits will be a podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that. Blair, am I missing anything?
No.
Nothing. Okay.
You got it. You didn't miss a beat. Let's go.
So let's do this. All right. We are now going to start the show. Starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 1003, recorded Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, the science of Psyops. I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your heads with antidepressants, carousels, and Annalee Newitz. But first, disclaimer. The agency finds, based on your performance, that you have not demonstrated that your further employment at the agency would be in the public interest. 168 laid off from the NSF. Hiring is frozen in national science and public health agencies. 1,800 laid off from the DOE, including individuals involved in the Hanford nuclear site remediation, PNNL, and Bonneville power production plant. NOAA is laying off 10% of its workforce. NASA has also been affected. Last week, as the Northwest experienced a freezing snow and ice storm, the National Weather Service radar just suddenly stopped working. Measles is spreading. Who's keeping track? Vaccines should be the thing holding it back. No one even knows where bird flu is at. The regular flu is having a field day. Universities are suddenly tightening their wallets. Some 250,000 without jobs nationally. Where's that going to be sopped up? Who's got a sponge? Legal battles might turn the tables, slow things down. Judges reminding White House lawyers that biology is not a fairy tale. With so much going on, the chaos seems to have won. But remember, your thoughts are your own, and each act of kindness is resistance along the road. And that This Week in Science is coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
Oh my gosh, good science to you too, Blair, Annalee, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. For the podcast listeners, you're not going to know what troubles I'm having, but the people who are watching live, I want you to know my internet is, I don't know what's going on anymore, but I guess that's not unusual in my life. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science. We do have a great show ahead, starting with a conversation with our special guest, one of the most incredible lapsed academics of our time, writer of science, culture, and the future, Annalee Newitz. Annalee, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This feels like a haven for lapsed academics. I think I can say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
My lips are working.
Lapsed, active, whatever. Yeah, we're home for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got tons of stories about science once the interview with Annalee has completed. And I want you to know I'm going to be talking about your brain like I like to do. I might be talking about some some sweeteners, aspartame, maybe SSRIs as antibacterials or antiseptic sepsis agents. There's some cool stuff going on. Blair, what's in the animal corner?
Oh, I have some friendly fish and some fly carousels.
Oh, I love carousels. Actually, I don't. Music, it's like clowns. It scares me.
How about a carousel covered in flies?
Oh my goodness. I can't wait. As we jump into the show here, everyone, I want to remind you that subscribing to TWIS as a podcast on your favorite podcast platform is a wonderful thing you can do. You can make sure that your friends are subscribed to. Just take their phones, forget about personal privacy, download it, subscribe them wherever, just be, hey, you should be listening to this. We also broadcast weekly, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Pacific time. This year, we might be making some changes, so keep your ears and eyes out for updates of our schedule. We're on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch live like we are right now. But if you have questions about stuff, want to see what we've done, go to twis.org, our website, for more information. Now it's time for the science.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Annalee Newitz has a PhD in English and American Studies from UC Berkeley, worked with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, founded IO9, was the editor-in-chief for Gizmodo, and actually accepted a pitch from me once upon a time for an article. What?
With pleasure.
I was like, what? You just said yes. They work with Ars Technica, among other science and tech news outlets, hosts the Hugo Award-winning podcast, Our Opinions Are Correct, with Charlie Jane Anders, has written several science and science fiction books, including The Terraformers, and most recently, Stories Are Weapons, Psychological Warfare and the American Mind. They have a new fiction book on the horizon this year about noodle-making robot restaurateurs. And it is really just wonderful to have you here tonight, Annalee. Thank you for joining us in this particular moment in history.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I mean, honestly, that's like, seriously, I told you before the show. My honor to have you here. Oh my gosh, it's about time. For those who in our audience who might not have read or been aware of Stories Are Weapons, your most recent book, what story does it tell and why did you write it?
So it's a nonfiction book about the history of psychological operations and culture war in the United States. That sounds like a lot, and it is. It was actually quite horrible to research and write. And it started out as a book about psychological operations in the military. And about halfway through researching it, I realized that all of these psychological weapons that I had learned about were now being used on the American people by the American people. And so I knew that I had to talk about culture war as well, because there's been this tremendous weapons transfer program. So it's about both things. It's about how we hurt each other with words and stories, how we traumatize each other with narrative, but also it's about how to push back and how to put down our narrative weapons and de-escalate a culture war. So it takes you through all the feelings.
Which at this point in time is, I think, especially essential as we're feeling, we're feeling the weight of all of the information and the chaos that's affecting us. Your PhD work, though, was published in 2006, looked at monsters in popular culture. 20 years later, how is this latest book connected to that original seed, and how has your thinking evolved since then?
Wow. So my dissertation, which became a book, was about how it was specifically focused on American pop culture and stories about certain kinds of monsters, including the undead and serial killers. And what I was really interested in was how our popular culture kind of reflects anxieties that the general public has. I think that part of the reason why we're willing to pay for movie tickets or pay for streaming is because we get something out of our entertainment that's more than just distraction. It kind of acknowledges our anxieties, sometimes to diffuse them, sometimes to catastrophize them, make them seem even worse than they are. And so that was what my dissertation was really about, is what were the anxieties that were being expressed in these stories? And they all were economic anxieties. A lot of these monster stories really deal with how people fear economic instability, they fear poverty, they fear jobs where their autonomy is taken away from them. And then that gets expressed in these fantastical tales. And it really did form, it was funny because, I kind of moved into science writing that didn't really allow me to talk about a lot of those issues for a very long time. And then when I came to writing Stories or Weapons, which was a book that kind of surprised me that I was doing it, I found myself calling on a lot of that stuff that I had learned back when I was an academic, thinking about how narrative and how fictional tales can actually exacerbate real life conflicts. And there really isn't a bright line that you can draw between the stories we tell and the actions that we take. Of course, it's a sliding scale. Like there's some stories we tell that we can never take action on. But then there's this big area in the middle where we tell stories to inspire each other to act. And that's where psyops land. And that's where propaganda lands, is in that place where we're trying to bridge the gap between our fantasies and what we do in real life.
As a science communicator, and a lapsed academic myself, I've come up against this time and time again. And, now I'm working to develop an association of science communicators so that professional science communicators have a network, a hub, a community to fall back on of practice. And one of the things that is concerning is that, like you said, that bright line, that thin line, what is the difference between marketing of science and the communication of science and the effectiveness of actually interacting and relating to an audience, a target audience?
Yeah.
Your community, right?
It's a huge question. And it's one of the things that I grappled with a lot in writing Stories or Weapons, because I think we want to believe that there is this bright line, and we want to think that, there's, no overlap at all. But what I wound up finding is that there is this kind of sliding scale. And on one end, you have pure fact-based reporting, right? And that could be a scientific paper where you're literally just reporting on measurable, repeatable data. So that's one side, pure nonfiction. On the other side, you have pure fiction. You have fairy tales or Lord of the Rings. And then in the middle,
world building in that one.
Right, exactly. And there's plenty of elements of realism, but it's still something that it's like, so far, too bad we don't have wizards or dragons, which totally bums me out like pretty much every day. And then in the middle of that,
CRISPR, it'll solve everything. No.
Yeah, just like in the documentary Rampage, where CRISPR rained on us from outer space and created a giant alligator.
Oh my God.
That one of the all-time great films about genetic engineering. But in the middle of that scale, right, in between these extremely factual reports and these extremely fictionalized worlds, is this big gray area. And that's where propaganda lives. That's where advertising lives. That's where psyops live. And it is hard to cope with because it is so ambiguous. And, sometimes you do write a piece of science communication that has elements of propaganda and advertising in it. I've written articles where I really believed in something that someone was researching, and I felt like their work was incredibly important to the world, and I was cheering them on, and you could tell,
I can't tell you the number of times I've been in that situation.
Yeah. And then you have to ask yourself, am I doing a disservice to the reader? Am I concealing something in order to make this story sound better?
Or not asking a question.
Right. Not asking the hard questions. And so one thing I'll throw out there is that in my research on psyops, there's really two ingredients in making something into a psychological weapon, something that's really used to manipulate people or demoralize them. And one of the ingredients is lying, and the other ingredient is violent threats. And so that's a helpful couple of things to have in your mind, as that there is a bright line there between persuasive writing and actual psychological manipulation. Like if you're not lying and you're not threatening somebody into listening to you or threatening someone into obeying you, you're not in the dark place. You may be in an ambiguous gray area. You may be a little bit guilty of cheering someone on in a story, but you're not manipulating your audience in a kind of pernicious way.
Right. It seems like anyone.
You might be hearing a cat.
Oh, there's all sorts of. What are the cats doing? What are they talking about back there?
They may be barfing.
Oh, not right, meow.
Sorry, cats.
I mean, following up on that, though, I mean, if somebody is putting messages out that are violent in nature, threatening in nature, that isn't just a hard, bright line. That's a clear and present danger, isn't it? Like that's something people should take notice of.
It is a danger, and it's something that, unfortunately, especially over the last 20 years with social media, I think people have learned to not take it seriously because so much of the kind of weaponized messages that you might 100 years ago have thought of as being just violent are now just kind of part of how people communicate on social media. And they're really, as I was looking at the history of this for my book, I found that there was kind of this turning point in the 1950s during the Cold War where you saw a lot of these weapons that had been developed by the military that the military knew were effective psychological tools like issuing violent threats, like manipulating people with lies. The military uses those tools in war because they do work.
Against enemies.
They work against foreign adversaries. That's the military's mandate, is to use weapons against a foreign adversary, not against the American people, not against people whose opinions they don't like. It's to be used in war. And then you start to see during the Cold War with things like, congressional hearings going after queer people in government, congressional hearings going after communists in education and government. You started to see those tactics being used against the American people. And now that's completely normalized. The idea that both the government and civil society would be full of these weaponized messages. We've kind of come to accept that. But in fact, we need to remember that those are weapons. And when we hear members of Trump's cabinet saying the point of our policies is to traumatize people, that's almost an exact quote from a military handbook about how to terrorize a foreign adversary. And we're not foreign adversaries. We're all Americans.
I want you to know that I actually have a copy of that declassified handbook from the CIA's Guatemalan or the efforts to overthrow a government, where all of the this is how you do propaganda. I have a copy of it, and I read it over the over the holidays, and I have everything is different in the way I've been doing marketing. My husband's a marketer. I know these things. But everything is different in the way I look at what I see in the world now.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I will add that I thought was so interesting researching propaganda and Psyops is that the military learned most of its techniques from marketing and from advertising. And so when, say, the Army has, special operations group that's putting together a PSYOP, they do things like focus group, and they think about their target audience, just like a target market. And they really lean into this idea that it's advertising in the service of kind of winning the war. So it's weird that there is all of this overlap, and we have to kind of draw boundaries where we can.
But from the aspect of boundary, not from marketing, there's also sowing chaos and confusion. And there are examples, as you bring up and you've talked about, hashtags that are used, and then people propagate using specific language in messages on social media that repeat the hashtag. That gets picked up by oh my gosh, what's going on? And then all of a sudden people are like, no, this is all wrong. And then it's, well, we have to fight back against it. And then it's confusion and delegitimizing the people who are fighting back against the hashtag. in an OPB interview, All Things Considered, you mentioned the DC blackout as one of the first things you saw. Through the years, we've also had, the defund the police. We've had like multiple terms that are emotionally activating and that have been used in this kind of and up and down.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not the same kind of marketing as just advertising.
No, it's not. And I think what you're getting at is a strategy that now I think we're deep inside in the United States, which is using confusion and using contradictory messages to undermine people's morale and to undermine people's faith in their leaders and their communities. And so we originally saw this happening a lot online, happened a lot on Twitter, even before it became X, where you would have kind of competing versions of a story. You'd have different people appropriating hashtags, like you said. One group is using it for one thing, another group is using it for something else. A bunch of fake people and bots are using it. You don't even know if you're talking to a real person. And that's really escalated, especially in the last few years, and especially in the last month, where you're seeing just basic words like the word diversity now being demonized by the government and removed from all government websites. And it's chaotic, it's confusing. And this is a form of propaganda. This is a form of undermining people's faith in reality. And it's something that's been a very, very popular method for information warfare in Russia. And now it's become really popular in the States too. And, Steve Bannon referred to this as flooding the zone with shit. So you just don't know what's happening. You can't trust if this person who's talking to you about science is an actual scientist or if it's someone doing a little bit of their own research.
And oftentimes now, even people who are scientists who are doing things because of reasons and muddying the waters. And I'm not going to name names, but I think I've named names historically.
I think it's so funny that the thing that I'm noticing is that I wouldn't have considered myself a conspiracy theorist until this year. And now I find myself just believing in any crazy conspiracy because the real world is so crazy that it becomes harder and harder to identify, okay, that's beyond the pale. Okay, this is real. It's making it harder and harder to identify what is conspiracy and what is real life. And I think it's also extremely disorienting for that reason.
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Because there's again, a psyop, the main goal of a psyop is to demoralize its victim, right? It's to demoralize its target. And so there's nothing more demoralizing than looking at a newspaper that used to be a source of information and truth and knowing that that newspaper has been co-opted by a guy who's just trying to get the president to, buy his spaceships. It's
not naming names.
Not naming names, but it feels like we just can't trust the people and institutions we once trusted. And also, even when we know that there's people who we can trust in an institution, we don't know if their voices are getting out. Like I think about the CDC all the time, where it's like, I don't know if the stuff on their website has been doctored by somebody who is just creating propaganda. I don't know if someone's written it with somebody holding like your fired letter up to their face. Like, if you don't say this, you're fired. Like there was just this news today, I think, about NASA saying, there's a 3% chance that this asteroid might hit Earth in, I forget how many years, like 6 years or 7 years. But, guess what? We've downgraded it to 1.5. And I'm like, did they really downgrade it to 1.5? Or did someone tell them to say that? And they are afraid.
2 days ago, they upgraded it. Like, honestly, I was following this and it was like, it's getting, scary. Now it's down. Like, no, stop it.
So which one is real? Is the downgrade real? Is the upgrade real? Is Yeah, this is what's so disorienting. Who do you trust? What do you trust? What's the reasoning behind it? And also, the other thing that I think is crazy is, where are the people protecting us? Because I know there are people doing things. I know things are happening, but we're not hearing about it.
Yeah.
So it feels even more isolating and disorienting because you don't get to see, it's not visible, the fights that are happening for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it feels like essentially that all of our media and communication systems have been politicized, have been turned into vehicles for political posturing, political power grabs. And so where do we talk? Like, I have a bunch of friends and now we just talk on Signal, like
that's where I'm starting too.
Yeah. It's like, we all used to be hanging out on social media and like, I like Blue Sky, but like, I don't know who's watching what I say on Blue Sky. I don't even know who's watching what I say on Gmail. Like, I feel like a total, gosh. I'm like Gene Hackman in the conversation. I'm like ripping my toilet apart looking for bugs or whatever. That's a old person reference, by the way.
I got it.
Kids, check out the conversation with Gene Hackman if you're interested in an amazing telecommunications paranoia type.
Yeah, it was like, me in the month of January.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. But I know we are limited in our time with you, and we've hit the end, and this conversation could go on and on and on because there's so much. And I want to talk with you about the link between the terraformers and your earlier book, The Four Cities, and how looking at the past and humans building on our own history led to this terraformers idea of the future. And your mind is your mind is a maze of brilliant ideas and insights, and I hope that I get to ask you more questions at some time in the future.
Yeah, I would love to come back and chat with you about deep history, and I'm actually very, very excited about deep history these days. So
okay, awesome, because that is another just wonderful area to focus in on. You have Noodle Robots coming out in August.
It's a book called Automatic Noodle, and it is set in my hometown of San Francisco.
And I love San Francisco. I lived there for a while.
Yeah, I know you did.
What high school did you go to?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't grow up in San Francisco.
Oh, you did?
Blair
it is my adopted hometown. Yeah,
okay.
I grew up in Irvine and went to Irvine High, for anyone who's a Southern California person out there. Yeah.
So Automatic Noodle, is there is there an optimistic future for these noodle making robots?
There is, actually. Yeah. It's a book about, it's a fairly cozy book. It is about what happens in San Francisco after California has successfully seceded from the Union, has established itself as an independent nation. And I'm not making that out to be a utopian thing. It's definitely, there's some good and there's some bad, right. But it's about recovering from trauma and loving food, and how we can build communities around feeding each other and helping each other survive. So it's very, it's full of a lot of warm feelings, but it is not without some spikiness and not without some critiques of America,
which you've never held back with. So, yeah. I really look forward to that, actually.
Yep. And my publisher would want you to know that you can pre-order it now.
It helped a heartwarming yet spiky book about noodle robot restaurateurs in San Francisco hit the bestseller list when it comes out in August.
I hope that would be great.
That would be cool. We don't have time to talk about your podcast, but you also have a podcast with Charlie Jane Anders. Yeah. Our Opinions Are Correct, Hugo Award winning. From there to where we are now, before you leave us, what would you like to leave our audience thinking about?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think One of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is how much our understanding of the future and what comes next for us, both scientifically but also culturally, really, really depends on understanding where we've been and understanding the past. And I think that's why I've turned a lot to, as a science journalist, writing about history, because I think that we just cannot plan for the future unless we treat history like a data set. This is the only set of data points we have about what it means to invest in long-term things and see the outcome. You know, we can look back and be like, oh, 2,000 years ago, some folks invested in imperialism in Rome. How did that go? It turned out not the greatest. So we've got some great, natural experiments that we've done in history, and we really need to keep hold of that. And embracing the future does not mean rejecting the past. So that's kind of what I have on my mind.
But it's also not necessarily embracing the past that was rewritten or written by the victors. It's looking deep into the actual records and actually looking at what happened, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's also about understanding that the past is multiple, right? There's many pasts, right? There's many perspectives on the past. There is the perspective of the winners, and then there's the perspective of all the other people. There's the perspective of the guys with all the money, and then the perspective of all of the rest of us. And a lot of historians and archaeologists are now working on looking at the rest of us, the regular people. And that's what the work that I write about archaeology is all about. So my book, For Lost Cities, is all about the regular people.
So I have a book idea for you. Instead of, like the multiple universes that split off from one reality because, anyway, time and blah, blah, blah,
multiverses,
stuff,
etc. Yeah.
Instead of going forward, go backwards. The different multiple histories.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. So
Kiki got so excited she knocked her microphone over.
I did. Sorry.
I will tell you guys because I'm about to take off, but we're all
done.
And I will tell you, I just started working on my next nonfiction science book, and it is going to be a deep history, and it's a history of parties and how humans got together and partied with each other.
Oh, that's excellent.
In ancient history. And it is giving me life, I got to tell you. Like, it's really exciting to party in the Bronze Age. There's a little light human sacrifice, but mostly it's just partying.
You got to sprinkle a little
just
in there.
a little light. I mean, I don't make the rules. Like, this is what happens at parties sometimes. So
we have to go back to whatever those elixirs were, like in Aztec, the ancient indigenous Americans. Those were some parties as well.
Yeah, they had some. Yeah, the black drink was a good time.
Oh, I can't wait.
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, you guys.
Thank you. I know we're over time. I was trying to wrap it up. Where can people find you if you want them to?
You can find my books in bookstores, and please buy them from your local independent bookstore. If you can't, you can always go to bookshop.org, which will help you find an indie bookstore to order from. And I am on Blue Sky. I'm Annalee N on Blue Sky. I am on Wandering Shop as Annalee N on Mastodon. I love Mastodon. Yay, Mastodon.
I'm back into Mastodon.
Yeah. And then my podcast with Charlie Jane Anders is called Our Opinions Are Correct. It's about science fiction and science and society. And that comes out every 2 weeks on the dot. We're dropping a new episode tomorrow morning. So check it out wherever fine podcasts are purveyed.
That language. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful night. I hope you get a great night's sleep.
Have fun, you guys.
Enjoy cuddling your Troy cats.
I will.
Meow. Yes.
Bye now, guys.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night, Annalee. All right, everyone. That was the incredible Annalee Newitz. I can't believe that we got to talk with her tonight. And we're done. That's it. Can't top it. No.
Sure. I mean, if you don't want to hear about flies on carousels, we could call it a night.
I know. No, I mean, we need some horror in the evening. So everyone, this is This Week in Science. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to have more stories because it's a science show. We have science news. What happened this week in science? If you enjoyed the show, please head over to twis.org. You can click on our zazzle.com link to check out our merchandise and support the show with your purchases. Also, there's some really cool artwork that Blair has created that has been incorporated into so many of the items there. Additionally, you can support the show in an ongoing fashion by also clicking on the Patreon link at click.org. No, that's not it. TWIS.org. That's the website. Go to TWIS.org, click on the Patreon link, become an ongoing supporter of TWIS. You get into our Discord, which someday I will get back into and be able to talk to you on again. Blair's in there. I hope Blair's talking to our Discorders because
I'm lurking.
All right, Discord lurker. Woot woot. But again, once again, the big thing, share with your friends. Tell everyone about TWIS. Tell everyone about this great conversation we had with Annalee this evening, and that people shouldn't just listen to that. They should actually subscribe to the show because we want to do more of this. We want to have more great conversations and talk more about the science in our lives, its past, and our future. Can't do it without you. Thank you for your support. And now we're going to come back into the show with that segment that we know and love. Fred's, Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. There's Animal Corner.
No, you're not going to say it. I was waiting. What you got, Blair? Let me tell you. Okay.
Yeah, Blair.
I can't be summoned without, that's what summons me. You understand?
I know. Magical spell words. I know.
Yes.
I know.
Okay. It's the incantation that opens the Animal Corner.
No idea what's going on here anymore. Go on with yourself. Get on with your bad self.
All right, let's talk about fish. Let's talk about
Yes.
fish and maybe a story that will make all of you not eat fish anymore. This is a study from Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior in Germany. And this was all kind of birthed out of an experience that some divers had where they were like, do these fish know who I am? And essentially they found, yes, wild fish can recognize individual humans and they can follow specific divers they know will reward them. Previously, there's been little scientific evidence that have shown that fish can recognize humans at all. They can tell them apart from anything else in the ocean. One captive bred species, archerfish, were able to recognize computer-generated images of humans versus other things in laboratory experiments. But there hasn't been any experimentation on fish and being able to recognize human faces or individual humans based on other markers. And the cool thing about this was that because it kind of anecdotally started to happen, they decided to do this study in the wild. They used, quote, willing volunteers who could come and go as they pleased. And so they went 8 meters underwater at a research site in the Mediterranean Sea. There are populations of wild fish, and generally these fish have become habituated to the presence of scientists. So they're not scared away by divers. So that's step one, right? So then they wanted to test to see if the fish could learn to follow an individual diver. So the first diver started by attracting the attention of local fish. So she wore a bright red vest and fed fish while swimming at a length of 50 meters. So she usually just fed while she swam 50 meters. Over time, she removed some of her conspicuous cues, like she took off the bright red vest, and then she also started to keep the food hidden. So she only fed the fish after they had followed her for the full 50 meters at the end of the follow. It was like she was training a dog. It's wild. And so out of the dozens of fish species that were at this particular space, 2 species of sea bream which you should all recognize as regular food fish.
We should.
Yeah.
Okay. Bream. Sea bream.
Sea bream.
Okay.
In particular, so the reason I know sea bream, this is so
I
funny,
don't know sea bream. I
is
know
because of
sun-kissed
Cooking
tuna.
Mama. If anyone has played Cooking Mama, they have you cook a lot of sea bream in that. And so I was like, oh yeah, sea bream. And I just realized right this second why I recognize that it's from Cooking Mama.
What is Cooking Mama?
Oh, Kiki.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness.
Is this
Crazy
a
sideline.
Is this like Roblox or something?
It was my absolute favorite game on the Nintendo DS. The DS was the double screen with the stylus, right? And I recently downloaded it for iPhone, and it is not the same. And I got rid of it right away. I was like, this sucks. But it's you slice, you dice, you cook, you stir, you add ingredients. It's excellent. It's like the coziest game. It was my favorite thing. Anyway, I have to dig out my DS after this now, I think. Regardless. Okay, so sea bream, not being cooked by Cooking Mama. Sea bream was following the diver. Where was I? Okay. Great. Okay, I got so distracted.
Nintendo could do that. I mean, come on.
Okay. So 2 species of sea bream were following through these training sessions. And it got to the point where once the diver entered the water, in seconds, they would see these sea breams swimming towards them out of nowhere. They'd be like, oh man, she's back with the treats. After 12 days of training, about 20 fish were reliably following this diver. And she was able to recognize them by physical traits. Because remember, these are wild fish. They can come and go. They could swim for miles and never come back, right? But she was able to recognize, like, oh, that's so-and-so.
Right. There's a figure that I've put up on the screen right now. The fish are named.
Yes, that's correct.
The black bream, Alfie, Geraldine, Julius, Cassie, left hump. Yes. and then saddled Bernie.
Bernie, my guy Bernie.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So she was able to recognize them. Mm-hmm. Then they added a second diver. So the second diver, this guy, dove in different gear. And some colorful parts were different colors. Some, the fins looked slightly different. So there were some subtle differences, but they weren't like wearing polka dots and stripes. It was very subtle. They still had the base color of black. They were still humans. And they started at the same point. They swam in different directions. On the first day, fish followed both of them equally. But the second diver, the guy, never fed the fish. Mm-hmm. So then starting in day 2, more and more fish were only following the first diver. They decided to focus on 6 fish out of the large group because they could identify them. And in repeat trials, when they wore identical diving gear, the fish had no idea. They followed whoever. Oh. But if they wore their individual diving gear, they were able to figure it out. This is strong evidence that the fish had associated the differences in the dive gear, most likely the colors, with the specific divers. Yeah, so they're identifying visual cues and differentiating humans apart. So
people with food and without food.
At first, right? I'm like, whoa, fish, smart. Then I'm like, hold on. Fish have to tell each other apart.
Yeah.
Based on coloring and patterns.
Yep.
So this is the easiest thing. The thing that really would have blown me away is if they had found a way to, like, not wear their mask for a few minutes or something, so that it was a face thing, so that their outfit was completely the same, but they had enough of their face, because when you're diving, you can't really see any face. It's really
so kind of like the crow studies,
exactly,
where they had the faces, the masks, the different clothes. Like they really got it, how the birds recognize people.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, this just sounds like pattern recognition. Which, sure, yeah, but what's the difference between a human diving and a fish swimming? It's It's just pattern recognition. I don't know. But still pretty cool that they could identify humans and even that they would bother with this giant thing and say like, oh, I actually care about the different humans.
But I mean, that's Pavlovian imprinting. I mean, this is like basic, like animals, like, hey, conditioning, right? Yeah, like food, I like that. I will do.
Yeah, red vest equals food.
Exactly. Would anybody wearing the red vest become the person, the individual, the food giver that they follow, right?
Yes, sounds like yes. So
it sounds like yes. Have you ever, I mean, you worked at an aquarium for a while. Did you ever like interact with those fish where you were like, oh, there's more there than, where they come and, it's like people looking at the primates at a zoo, it's like, oh, there's interaction there. There was a friend who had an aquarium with a pufferfish, and the pufferfish was like a dog. It was like a puppy. It would come to you'd walk up to it. If it knew you, it would come up more quickly. If it knew you were the one who was feeding it, it was like, there, yeah. It's like, it was that it was the cutest little fish it made me, that puffer fish made me love fish, really.
Yeah. I think the closest thing is there was a white sturgeon at the aquarium who was blind, and he had been trained to respond to audio cues to come get his food because he couldn't just kind of broadcast feed just like everybody else because he couldn't see, so he'd be left kind of without getting much food. Everyone else would eat before him. So they had to make a series of sounds, and then he'd kind of make his way to the top of the water, and there was a diver standing on the deck there, and they'd hand feed him.
Really sweet.
He was so sweet. Lenny, the sturgeon.
Sturgeon are amazing too.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically dinosaurs, so
they are.
That's its own thing.
People need to learn about sturgeon.
Yeah. Yes, once again, selling fish short, I suppose, but also it doesn't seem that complex to recognize different colored outfits. But anyway.
Yeah. So different colors. So want to talk about a carousel? Carousels are colorful.
Some are. This one is white and gold. And this is a study from Leipzig University. For the first time, they have demonstrated play-like behavior in flies. This is not a human-sized carousel. This is a fly-sized carousel.
Oh my gosh.
And yes, the fruit flies, Drosophila melanogaster, played on the carousels.
This is... what?
This is already maybe my favorite story of 2025. I feel like this is going to come back at the end of the year. They voluntarily and repeatedly visited a carousel. They participated in swinging, bobbing, sliding, or turning. And they
are you telling me that the flies have dance movements and very choreographed and intricate behaviors, somewhat like bumble or bees, who we know play?
Yes, basically yes.
Fruit flies.
Fruit flies, the most basic animal, the one that you raise and just is out in a day in the lab. They go through generations and generations in a lab, just like that. Turns out, in that time, they have time to play on the carousel. So they conducted a detailed analysis of how the flies interacted with carousels in their space. Many flies avoided the carousel, but others visited it repeatedly and for long periods. And this is my favorite part. When they put 2 carousels in the dome and rotated them alternatively. So like, first carousel A rotates and carousel B is stagnant. And then they turn off carousel A and they turn on carousel B. The flies followed it so that they could ride a moving carousel.
Okay, so the question is, why? Is this like Is it the motion? Is it they don't have to fly? What are they
Great
attracted
question.
to? What's
Great
going
question.
on? Yeah.
Researchers believe it is play.
Why?
Great question. So they put 190 individual flies in a carousel arena. It was a glass dome. It was a centimeter high. Then they filmed them for 3 to 14 days. Because they had so many flies, and they were able to do continuous data analysis based on the movement of the flies, they had the equivalent of 7 years of data.
Because, oh wow.
So this is what
Thank
their
you,
analysis
flies,
told
for
them.
having short lives and living on a timeline that is very different from our own.
Tiny,
And
also.
teeny.
Yes. Unlike most behavioral experiments on flies, the researchers had to rely on the insect's voluntary behavior. So this is my second volunteer study of the day.
Still like the fish. Yeah. Not forced.
There was not enough space under the glass for them to fly onto the carousel. So they had to jump on there. They had to walk on there. It was uncoordinated, which allowed them to show that unplanned visits would be atypical. They would really have to go out of their way to get onto the carousel. So they're going on there on purpose. The findings, according to these researchers, are that this was not motivated by anything else but exploration.
I would say that exploration is different than play.
Sure. Yes.
And I
So
think-
good.
yeah.
Good point. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe could be. They feel like it is play, I think, because of these other things that they're doing, the bobbing, the sliding, the turning. So they're basically like interacting with the carousel in a way that is participatory, I guess. I don't know. That's a really good question, and I would love to talk to these researchers about exactly drilling down why this is considered play.
I think it really gets at, this is fascinating. It gets to me at the idea of play in humans and other, primates as a developmental part of our development. Hey, thanks,
Mhm.
words. Where play is something that we do with others or on our own that is exploratory and yet not something that it doesn't have like high negative impacts. So
Right.
cost benefit is it's just, there's no costs really. Right.
So
It's mostly
sorry.
benefit.
So I found
Yeah.
the criteria for play. So let's talk about it. Okay. So
Yeah.
criteria for play-like behavior requires the activity to be 1, of no immediate relevance to survival. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. 2, voluntary, intentional, and rewarding. 3, non-ethotypical. 4, repeated yet unstereotyped. So that's where them
Yeah.
walking on there sometimes, jumping on there sometimes, right, is part of it. And 5, free from stress. They were not showing any stress behaviors. So I think that's the other thing, is that exploratory behavior could sometimes be shown with a stress response if they're
I want
looking
out.
for a way out, or if they're looking for food, or all these sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And so normally in mostly vertebrate studies, they've been able to find lots of quote unquote play that follows these criteria. But in invertebrates, there have been very few studies, aside from wasps, spiders, bumblebees, and otherwise it's anecdotal. And so the idea behind this study was that they identified the voluntary spinning on a carousel. It was idiosyncratic. It was
Right.
considered play-like. And some showed spontaneous avoidance, which also kind of covered this. It wasn't what all of them were doing. It wasn't advantageous. And so there were just some individuals that would seek out the stimulation of this carousel.
Yeah, so that's another question. In the figures, it says there are avoiders. Was there anything obvious about like population, like the number of individuals that happened to be more exploratory, others
Right.
that were less exploratory, because this kind of gets to me as like analogical to personality types, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, now I'm just going to ask a crazy question, which is probably nonsense, but I'm just going to ask, do laboratory fruit flies, after having been bred in labs for thousands, if not millions of generations at this juncture,
do they know?
do they engage more with weird things that are not natural than a wild fruit fly? Because we're supposed to be kind of removing potential confounding variables.
Oh yeah, they're in the most boring environments ever. They've got
But
petri
yeah,
dishes
they've been
with like
spending-
sugar water and a sponge.
The fruit fly equivalent of eons in hermetic spaces, and you gave them a carousel. I don't know.
Seriously, it's like Neo's white construct in the Matrix, and then suddenly a carousel appears.
Yeah.
You know, except it's generations only knowing.
I don't know. Like, are there weird, like, epigenetic artifacts from being in a very boring space? I don't know.
We do know not in invertebrates necessarily as much, but in mammals for sure, fish, other invertebrates, we know that the more interesting the environment is, the better it is for the individual animals, that animals have better animal mental health when there's more to do and more to look at and more to explore. I don't know.
I'm just the number one part of my job caring for captive animals was providing them enrichment. Which a carousel for a fly? Absolutely enrichment. But I think that's the other question here, actually, is do we have to adjust how laboratory flies are cared for now because they don't have enough to do? If they can engage with a carousel, do they need more enrichment?
If we are looking at them in terms of the studies having anything to do with trying to make connections to human behavior or cognition or psychology, then there is a lot more we need to think about in terms of how we treat all animals in captivity.
Yeah. I mean, just like we found out that we were keeping mice too cold. Or was it too hot? I can't remember. But we were keeping them the wrong temperature for like hundreds of years.
And we keep office buildings are the wrong temperature because they're, the temperature's good for guys in suits.
Yes, they're the right temperature for men. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean,
anyway,
we've been keeping guinea pigs isolated when guinea pigs are social creatures.
Right.
There's
yes. And that is a confounding variable because if they're stressed, it's going to impact all of your science. So anyway, fruit flies on carousels. You're welcome.
I hope we hear more about this. I really, really want to hear more about this idea of play in various animals, including humans, because when we think of play, it's not just that there's no stress. There's also a certain aspect of expression or joy. It's not, I don't know. There's something else there that I don't think is necessarily being considered in the words that are being used by these scientists when they say that invertebrates or vertebrates or whoever are playing.
Yeah.
I think our words are not necessarily
it's a nomenclature issue for sure. I do need to call attention though to this teeny tiny carousel.
Yeah, please do.
Because somebody had to paint this. My question is, was this a researcher who like does Warhammer on the side or something. Like, was this
Seriously?
somebody who paints miniatures and was like, oh, I know, I'm gonna make a miniature carousel that's a centimeter tall. Anyway,
Wait, did you? Is that real? That's not what they gave them.
I'd like to think that it is.
They did not.
It's
give
honestly, this is probably
little,
made by AI.
horses.
Honestly, it's probably not even real. I do need to know what it looked like, though.
Yeah.
In real life.
Seriously. All right. Well, the question of how are we looking at all of these animals, and how does that affect our health? Does influence my next couple of studies, and we've brought it up over and over again throughout the history of this show. My last studies for the night. Let's see, what am I talking about, Blair? I wanted to talk about, yes, aspartame. That sweetener that makes, you'd be able to have a diet soda that's...
Right, but then there was that whole thing saying that, like, you can't eat too much fake sugar. It actually makes you hungrier. That was a thing that was going around for a while.
Right. And there were also questions about, how does it affect your health? And there have been lots of studies, because we have people who, with insulin resistance, with diabetes, with metabolic disorders, that when they're in situations that where they cannot have sugar, these non-sugar sweeteners have been, a big help to people being able to maintain their diets, their weight, their metabolism. And yet we have seen that there are cardiovascular influences. And time again, we see these studies come out that suggest that these sweeteners are bad for us, bad for our health. But why? Why are they? So anyway, a new study just published in Cell Metabolism this last week, titled "Sweetener Aspartame Aggravates Atherosclerosis Through Insulin-Triggered Inflammation." The researchers looked at specifically how the consumption of these artificial sweeteners, specifically aspartame, has been linked to cardiovascular diseases. And they showed that a 0.15% aspartame solution increased insulin secretion in mice and monkeys, not just mice, but primates as well, mice and monkeys. They looked at the vagal reactions. They looked at blood insulin levels. They looked at parasympathetic activation. They were looking at insulin secretion, what happened within the body of these animals. And they found that when aspartame was consumed, it led to the growth of atherosclerotic plaques. And this is via an insulin-dependent mechanism. So when aspartame is consumed, it ends up being, I'm going to try and open up a screen here for everyone to look at. Too many things going on in my brain at one time. The vagus nerve is involved with releasing certain factors. One specifically, CX3CL1. It's a chemokine. It's an upregulated gene in insulin-stimulated arterial endothelial cells. And when you delete the receptor, it gets rid of the atherosclerosis. So basically, there's this molecule, the gene gets upregulated, this chemokine, it's a receptor, it's on the inside of the blood vessels. And as the blood is flowing past and insulin's going past and all this stuff is going on, it's like, I'm going to grab onto the things that are making inflammation happen. And it doesn't go away. And so it is a signaling receptor that leads to inflammation of in the insides of your blood vessels, and then that leads to the buildup of the plaques as like a sclerotic scar, basically. And so the idea is that we could target potentially this one particular receptor. Maybe we could make artificial sweeteners that don't stimulate this at all.
That would be better.
Maybe that would be better.
Like, that's not the point. The point's not to put you on more drugs, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, okay. So you have metabolic disease. You have diabetes. Well, you're already taking extra insulin, or you need to take this other thing. Yeah. Well, we're gonna do this other thing so you can drink diet soda.
right.
Yeah.
No. I think
But now
no.
they have this actually gives a target to understand the signaling axis of what leads to these cardiovascular disorders that are related to these artificial sweeteners, when we wouldn't think that there should be any downside to the artificial sweeteners. There are. We're figuring out the problem. Maybe eventually we'll figure out how to make it all better. But yeah, for now, it's a target. But I thought for this particular study, it was very interesting to be looking at mechanisms about what is actually happening in the body, as opposed to, this is bad for you, okay?
Yeah, which is what you hear, right? Oh, it's bad for you. Okay, but how?
How? Exactly. What's going on? So apparently there's
no
just
better fake sugar at this juncture than aspartame. That's still the best one.
No, this is the one that they looked at. There are others, and I'm sure that what I hope is that the researchers will continue studies looking at different artificial sugars and or sweeteners to be able to get an understanding of whether or not this is a generalized mechanism, or whether or not this is something that is specific to aspartame. And yeah.
Oh yeah, sucralose is the other one I was thinking about.
There's
And
sucralose,
stevia.
stevia. Yeah, there's a few different ones. Yeah, monk fruit, basically the same as stevia. There's enough people who can't or don't want to have sugar in their diet that want to have nice, sweet, maybe want to have a nice sweet treat. That if there is a way to figure out what is making or exacerbating lethal diseases in humans, how we can minimize that. Be kind of cool. Yep. Hey, you remember that thing called COVID, Blair?
What was that? It's COVID?
COVID?
COVID? Is that what you're saying? Corvad?
Coughed it out.
Corvid?
Go to bed.
Crows? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh yeah, crows. I love crows. Let's talk about crows.
Okay.
No, I was talking about COVID. Well, the pandemic that's over. Okay, podcast people, you don't see my air quotes. I hope you heard my sarcasm. While people were being admitted to hospitals and ending up with certain diagnoses, we had findings that were reported on COVID-19. Yes, Paul Disney. We had findings that were reported on that were very curious, that suggested that people who were on SSRIs were less likely to get as sick as other individuals who were infected with COVID, less likely to end up with sepsis, less likely to end up with, the worst cases. And we kept looking at this, and there were, a lot of, I remember bringing the stories to the show and kind of going, this is really weird. It's interesting that this is a trend, and people kept looking at it. Salk Institute is now reporting their work, which has just been published in Science Advances, on how Prozac, fluoxetine, that they specifically manipulated the levels of in different groups of mice who they gave Prozac to, mice they didn't give Prozac to. They gave them all pathogens to get sepsis and get sick and all that kind of stuff. They wanted to know what would happen. In their studies, they actually saw that fluoxetine Prozac protected mice from daily injections of it, protected mice from sepsis and infection. They saw this over and over again, and they were like, okay, what's happening here? Let's test this a little further. And they were like, okay, does this have to do with serotonin? So they were like, all right, all the mice are on Prozac. Some of them have been on it for a while. Some of them are new to it. So different levels of circulating serotonin. Turns out serotonin has nothing to do with it. Any of the animals on fluoxetine were protected to one degree or another from infection and sepsis. So they were like, okay, this has to do with the immune system. Our antidepressants then are just affecting our immune system somehow. And so they started looking for what mechanism might be doing this. They discovered that fluoxetine specifically hits an interleukin, which is one of the immune system's various signaling molecules, interleukin 10. And interleukin 10 gets upregulated. And in those individuals in which they had interleukin 10 metabolizing, they had more defense against pathogens. This is a mechanism by which our antidepressants, which are fucking, I'm sorry, F word.
I got it.
Rachel, edit that out. Our antidepressants, which are a sledgehammer, especially Prozac, fluoxetine, to the mental issue, the diagnosis of depression. Sledgehammer. It impacts our immune system in a way that we were not aware of. And then now we're finding that this weird thing that was a trend during COVID, when we're like, oh, hey, that's kind of strange. Maybe we should look into it. And now there might be a mechanism, and there might be they're looking at possibly looking into, can we give fluoxetine to patients in care wards to help against sepsis? Should we be giving the Pope fluoxetine right now? I mean, I don't know.
So, I mean, you're getting to the heart of this, which is, this is cool and all, and this is great, and oh, this is awesome. We found another use for Prozac, but at the heart of this is, and I just looked this up, Prozac first hit the market in 1987.
Yeah.
So this thing's been around for a long time, like almost 40 years. And we're just now finding out that it is impacting a completely different system of the body than it is diagnosed for.
Off-label use, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the scary thing. Like, how what if it was something bad?
I mean, Prozac leads to some people wanting to commit suicide. So there are very bad side effects.
That's the thing, is we know about that one. This is a side effect. This is a side effect of this drug that we did not know about. In this case, it's a good one, and we might actually use it to our advantage. But that's what's so scary, is that there's so many drugs out there that we think we know exactly how they work, and we think that it operates in a vacuum. But Prozac is extremely widely used, well studied, and has been around for almost 40 years.
It is, and that's why I use the term sledgehammer, because it's one of the early antidepressants, and this is something that people have talked about over and over again, is that they worked for this thing, and it was a general target that they were aiming for. Let's paid selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Let's let more serotonin end up in the brain, the blood, the body. We're learning more now about the gut-brain axis, about microbes impacting our immune system. We're learning, there was a study out this week that I didn't bring that has to do with glycosylation and epigenetics related to microbes and how their impact in the gut actually influences glycosylation of chromosomes and of things in our brain. So we know serotonin is involved. Serotonin is not just a happy, hey, it's involved in digestion. It's involved in so much. This particular impact, I'm not surprised that there is another impact beyond just serotonin. And I'm sure that there are more. I think this is the top of the iceberg, right? There's a lot more underneath the surface of the water that we can look at to see exactly what's being influenced and how and why, that we have, maybe there's just anecdotal evidence, but that's where it starts. Enough people report enough things. And that's what happened with COVID. We had enough people all at once having the same things. And they're like, oh, these people just happen. We know it's in their medical record. They happen to be on antidepressants, SSRIs.
Interesting. But
right?
Yeah, I mean, then it's up to the doctors to start drawing these conclusions and talking to each other and seeing trends and then kind of initiating these larger conversations, which...
No. We're all our data has been taken. So,
right. I forgot about that. We don't have any data anymore.
Ours anymore. Everyone has our data. They are putting all the pieces together for us, and they're going to fix it all.
A bunch of 19-year-olds are taking care of it for us. You don't have to worry about it.
Maybe 26. I don't know. What else? I love my 13-year-old, but I don't want him in charge of anything.
Your Social Security? No, I don't think so.
No, he's a good kid, but still. Come on.
Any hoozle. Well, we'll learn more about it in the next pandemic since we no longer have people researching the bird flu for us. So
yeah. So the one thing I mentioned, there are people researching the bird flu. There are scientists still doing work.
They just fired a lot of them yesterday.
Yeah, as of 8 p.m. Eastern time yesterday, there was a gutting. There are legal processes in place to slow down the process and maybe make it not possible because of the legality of it. There's questions being asked there. This is a test. It's a big test. There's a lot right now, which is why I'm glad we got to talk to Annalee tonight. And I'm going to thank her for her time once again, even though she's not here. And I hope you all spend some time reading her books because she really is a thoughtful contributor to our society who's looking at things from very different perspectives. One of the things from the book that she wrote is like, oh, hey, look at all these sci-fi writers who actually helped the DoD run through scenarios because they know how to world build and create these things. We do all create our own reality. Our minds are our own. And the idea that you let anyone tell you what your reality is giving in. So figure out, yes, do your own research, but I don't mean it like that. I mean it like, know who you can trust. Right. Find the people who are not in it, obviously, for the fame or the money or whatever it is. Find the people in your community. Get off the internet sometimes. And, right now we need to help each other. If you know of job opportunities or positions available for scientists or science communicators, please send them to info@TWIS sciencecom.org. We will send them to our mailing list, to our members. I want to be a part of helping find new opportunities for people whose opportunities have been cut short. If you feel like you can't do anything, remember that you are not alone, and just having a conversation with somebody about how you're feeling can create a bond that builds a bridge that is part of the web of our community.
Yes, part of the social engineering here is trying to make you feel alone and crazy. So talking to each other and recognizing that we share common values, common ideas, and common baselines for what is decent and true is essential.
Get this. Pew survey results today showed this thing that Republicans and Democrats have in common. Most of them dislike Zuckerberg.
That's hilarious.
It's common ground. Come on. Peas, carrots, Zuckerberg. Let's talk about that. Remember? What do we have in common?
I love pizza. I hate Zuckerberg. I like ice cream. Hate Zuckerberg. If we could just expand that distrust and hate to other billionaires, I think that would be really helpful. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack.
Yes. So also, I think, yes, people are working on things. There are marches being organized. There's action being taken. I know, for example, there's a what is it called? Buy nothing, spend nothing. February 28th. It's called like a blackout or something. Budgetary blackout. I forget. There's some fancy language for it. But if you're not happy with what billionaires are doing right now, don't spend any money on February 28th if you can. Plan ahead. Don't spend money that day. There's a March for Science being organized right now. People are doing things, but right now a lot of this craziness is designed to make you feel helpless. And so if you need to turn off your computer and disengage and watch a movie that has nothing to do with current events and not listen to the news right now, that's okay, because all of the news is designed to make you feel crazy.
I mean, honestly, though, like if you want to know, if you really want to dig deep into what's happening right now, watch the Grammys, the Super Bowl halftime show, and Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary music show. Just putting it out there. Some great stuff in entertainment right now. Additionally, for anyone who does want to go out in public and protest, take care for your own safety and understand that we're standing up for things we believe in, and that is important. But be careful. I can't say things. I'm on Signal, everybody. Hey. There are people out there who have put helpful instructions on how to prepare yourself for public demonstrations and to be aware of the other people around you in public demonstrations, and know that violence is not okay right now. This is I love onions. Thanks, Michael. So many layers. Work stoppages in science. I'm going to say additionally that I believe that the movement to do work stoppages in universities for science is not a really great idea, because science has such a long-term impact. Yes. All it does is just give fodder for, the selfish elites in academia who aren't thinking about whatever. If you really would like to do something, write a letter to your local newspaper. There's a new effort. Honestly, I will help. If you are a scientist, if you are someone who wants to write to your local newspaper, your Congress people, let me know. I will take what time I can to help people edit and frame their messaging. because I think it's important that we all write the right words. And it's not about propagandist messaging. It's about speaking our truth. So the downstream ripples from the defunding of grants from NSF and NIH and the indirect costs, if those are not immediately addressed through legal routes, are going to have extreme impacts on local communities around the country. Right now, like Kentucky has already said, we can't absorb all the jobs that people who work in the government have lost. So communities need to come together. Science in itself is a human endeavor. We are people who come together to support the endeavors of humanity. So, if you think I can help, I will try to help. I will do what I can. Sometimes I like to lie in bed and not get out from under the covers and avoid the computers. But we've gone long enough. Blair.
Yes.
Have we said it all?
Yes, I think we have. For tonight, at least. For this
tonight.
week.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us for this episode of This Week in Science. I do hope that you'll join us again next week. Fada, thank you for all your help with social media. Show notes, Gord, Aaand, Laura, others who helped maintain the chat and make sure that our chat is a great place to be. Thank you for being there. I mean, honestly, all of you in the chat, you keep it the place that it is. This is our community. Let's make it the place we want to spend time in, right? Identity 4, thank you for editing out the bit earlier and for recording the show. Rachel, thank you for your amazing assistance in editing the show. And thank you to all of you who support us on Patreon. We could not do this without your absolutely generous support. So I would like to thank the following people. It doesn't want to open. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you to Lauren Gifford, Dana Lewis, Eden Mundell, Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Chorus, Pierre Velazar, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Vegard Shefstad, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Shubru, Sarah Forfar, Don Mundis, PIG, Stephen Albaran, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mac Hessenflow, Steve Leeson, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom Greg, Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Phillips Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, EO, Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, and Tony Steele. Thank you, everyone, for your support on Patreon. And if you would like to support us on Patreon, I suggest you head over to twis.org and click on that Patreon link. Next week, we'll be back, Blair?
We will be back on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Perhaps while you paint a teeny tiny carousel? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org. You can also sign up for our newsletter. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know on one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be...
Where is it going to go,
placed
Blair?
in a bowl of noodles made by robots. And we'll never get to it.
Because it was so delicious, somebody ate it first.
Yep. We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you learned anything from the show, remember...
it's all your own head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. It's This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science.
I just faded that out because I was watching Blair drink water, and I swear I haven't been able to hear a single song tonight, and I don't know what is happening there.
Really strange.
Oh, it's so weird. I was like, oh, I gotta fade out at some point. I apologize. I don't know what it is. I couldn't get the first thing. Like, something's not loading on my end. Marshall even got Kai to stop playing his super high bandwidth kind of video game stuff. I don't know. Oh, Michael, thank you for joining us after not having been here in years. Appreciate you coming on back for this show tonight. Pepsi Cola, thank you for being here. And Zombie Tom Hanks, yes, legal is so slow, but at the same time, there are some actions that can slow certain other actions down. Disney, I don't know if I want to beep gap or other. Did that really happen? I
wrote the time stamp in the rundown. Also, our guest said Sweetener as well, so I took note of when that was as well.
Thank you. I mean, we're all adults here, but sometimes not adults listen to the show, so it's good to have that. Oh, Fada, I like that one. Off-label use is your punk band name. I love it. That works. Yeah.
Paul, it was at 22 minutes and 15-ish seconds.
Blair, you're amazing. Thank you for taking note of that.
You're welcome.
I'm just like, wee, here it goes. Oh my gosh. We're just saying words now.
It's all good.
Who's paying attention anyway, except to the people listening in to, I don't know, whatever trackers they've got on my computers.
Man, if they have time to do that, they're welcome to it. They don't have time to actually figure out who works with nukes before they fire people. So I don't understand who would possibly be sitting around listening to what we're doing.
I think that's a psyop. That's a whole fake story. That whole thing is get it out there, and then people go, no way, and then blah, blah, blah. This bird flu, they've done another thing. Oh, they fired the people in charge of monitoring bird flu. Like,
and they don't know how to get in touch with them. That's the part of the headline that I don't understand.
Trying to get them back. And I'm like,
what did they do? Jump off the flat earth? Like, what are you talking about?
This is part of it. Yeah, so everyone, honestly.
I don't know where they live, or where their phone number is, or what their personal email is. HR files? Who's heard of that?
I mean, who has any of that information anymore now?
We just purged their data when we fired them. Like, what? No, you didn't. Or did you fire all of HR, and so you don't know how to get that information because you fired HR? Like, what happened? I don't...
Everything is happening all at the same time, and it's ridiculous, and they are doing the thing that demoralizes people, that they're putting people in the choice of quitting and taking a payout, or save their families, or staying and submitting. People need to pay bills. People have to do things. Like, there's a whole bunch of leverage that's going on right now, and I can't say that I understand any of it. I mean, I'm not that smart. I'm not into politics at all, so like whatever.
I saw something called the Swiss cheese theory. It was pretty
Oh, that was from COVID. That was like the Swiss cheese where you're supposed to like have all the different things so that the information event, you know, it gets there. Like,
yeah, so this is the Swiss cheese theory that we have all these safety guards and measures to stop fascism. But if they throw enough things at it, then all the holes will line up.
That was COVID.
Yeah. So this is the Swiss cheese theory also, but related to fascism. So
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all. Yeah, it's after show. It is 9:40. We did not do a 2-hour show. We did a pretty tight 90. Nice job, Blair.
Don't look at me.
We did a good one on that one. So
I also did corroborate, by the way, that picture of the carousel. So I have to explain what it was.
Okay, good.
It's not AI.
Okay.
I kind of feel like
it's an artist
to be spliced into the show. No, it's really cute, actually. It's what a bunch of the graduate students made for the lead researcher on the project afterwards. It was a present.
Oh. Why didn't they say that? That's really sweet.
I know. I had to dig. I had to dig to figure. I had to go to this article and then that article and then the source material and then another article, and it was like pictured gift from the graduate students at the end of the oh man,
that's
I was
sweet.
so bummed. But like,
that's
why?
Awesome.
Why is that the cover?
That shouldn't be
whatever.
The cover picture.
Anyway,
they should
in
have come
reality,
up with something else.
It looks like a spinning petri dish with a glass dome over it.
Right, because
That's
it had to be like you were talking about, the thing that they can't get in. Like it had to be the thing they climbed in through, like on their own without being forced. And
I would have loved if it was little horsies, though. Like, come on, science! You can't give me little horsies
for fruit flies.
Like those little pencil erasers or something.
Do they care which horse they're riding? I mean, I used to run at the carousel and I'd pick out the horse that I wanted.
Of course. You don't do that now?
No, like 200 yards away. I'm like, that one! You know, I would, yeah, I'd go for it. Oh my goodness. How far back does it go? Oh, aviation, Eric Knapp. That's nice. Let's not talk about that right now. Mm-hmm. Michael Jobin, right. This is the after show. We did the show. This is the after show. I'm going to go tell my son that he can go back to doing whatever he likes to do on the internet. He should probably go to bed. It's that time of night.
I'm going to go wash a bunch of toddler dishes and then go to bed myself.
There are so many dishes, and there's so many little socks.
So many dishes. Nobody told me about the dishes, I gotta tell you. And now I talk to other toddler parents, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm up to like 11 doing dishes every night. I was like, nobody told me.
It's the
nobody
extra
told
dishes.
Me about the dishes.
And then there's like the special dishes, because you're like, oh, yes. when they're bottle feeding, that's special.
Oh,
and then there's the special like sippy cups. And then there's
the sippy cups. Well, and also everything's silicone now, which is great, except that you can't run it through the dishwasher because then it tastes like soap. So I have to hand wash all of the silicone dishes every night, and the silicone bibs and the sippy cups and the spoons.
You have an instant pot.
No.
Oh, okay. Because you can use an Instapot as a sterilizer. Just FYI for everyone out there, if you need to sterilize anything, Instant Pots are great.
Fold toddler clothes, and then I'm gonna go to bed.
Blair.
So
stop folding the toddler clothes.
I'm sorting the toddler clothes. Better?
Yeah, it's fine.
The pants have to go with the pants, and the shirts have to go with the shirts, and the socks have to go with the socks. Because otherwise I will go insane.
No, I went insane for a while. I was taking all the little socks and folding them into little sock bundles, the pairs together. I would fold everything, and then I realized, what am I doing? Who cares if it's neatly folded? Who cares if the kid is wearing matched socks?
No.
He's gonna go in the sandbox tomorrow. There's gonna be
Also,
3 costume changes.
He's gonna put his hand directly into something sticky and then rub it all over himself and me. So
yes.
So he'll wear that outfit for, who knows, 20 minutes?
Yes. Maybe 15.
Yes. No, I will say normally Brian would have done the majority of that while I was doing this today, but he is studying for an exam tomorrow.
Which you guys are wonderful at sharing the load, which I think is very important. And
it's very good. I am very glad I do not live in the 1950s for many reasons.
We don't want to go back.
No, I won't. Actually, I will take it further and say I will not.
I will not.
I will not go back.
And I will not let future generations go back there either.
No. Not allowed.
Nope. I didn't just say that. No, I'm a liar. I drank wine tonight, so who can trust me anyway? I don't say anything important.
I trust you.
I don't say anything important. I did have a thing I did on the Skeptic podcast, Brian Dunning's podcast. They did a podcast on misinformation and
appropriate.
Everybody had very great things to say, and I was like, I don't know. I went on a rant, but then I carefully edited the rant and I sent it, and Brian's like, great, record it. And I was like, all right, I got this Frankenstein set up here at home because everything's mess. Blah. I recorded it. A Skeptoid. Thank you, Paul Disney. Yes. And apparently I'm like the intro and the outro points of the podcast. So I think I made some good points. Yeah, I think Brian liked my framing.
Fun.
So yeah, there's misinformation episode of the Skeptoid podcast. If you want to check it out there, everyone.
Nice.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what? Oh, you edited me down just to that little bit? And then I kept going and I'm like, oh no, you put me at the end too? I'm like, oh.
Excellent.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, and sometimes I say things in ways that are effective.
Good.
Yeah.
Are good.
Yeah, I is good.
Speech is good.
On some time places.
Words good.
Yeah. Blair. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing the show last week when everything, like I had a laptop that I'd been using, and apparently like that day, Marshall's like, no, it's this is compromised again. Don't know how it happened. And so that was it. And we didn't have the laptop that I'm using now. Eventually I hope I can get my tower back up and running. But yeah, so I was like, what? No, what are you talking about?
Man,
he's like,
I thought it just didn't start. I didn't realize you got.
No, it's like it keeps coming. It's like it's these waves of compromise.
Nefarious.
Yeah, everyone out
Leave
there,
Kiki alone. Ones and zeros. No thank.
Everybody out there, make sure that you're. I mean, I know many of you are well versed in internet security, but really, truly, make sure that you are firewalled at the modem level, the router level, that you have, proxy. If you can, have 2FAs. Don't attach everything to your phone number. Like there's so many things that don't download mods from Steam. There's so many things. To digital, I don't know, keeping yourself safe. And recently it's just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse because it's not just people, it's the AIs stuff, and it's getting more and more intelligent and malicious. So do not click on links in Don't do that. Come on, everybody. Have a scanner that scans everything you download.
Yikes.
Make yourself safe. Like, seriously, this online world. Oh. Shubru, yeah, dual routers, IoT guest. Yes, we my son is now separated from the rest of our entire home network. We've
Smart.
isolated my child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know a lot of you out there know these things, but I'm just saying them out loud in this after show. And I really hope that everyone does what they can to maintain their digital privacy and sanitation.
Jeez. Wild. I'm so sorry. What a crazy time.
Oh my goodness. It's a whole
I can't even say you're
thing.
going to like look back on this and laugh later, because you're not. Like, this will have always sucked.
Yep. This
always
beginning
will.
of the beginning of 2025, I was like, yeah, okay. I actually had energy. I was like getting into it. It has been a long decade.
Shoved and then kicked, and then kicked again, and then shoved again.
Oh, what? Yeah. But we all, this is nothing. This is first world problems. But I'm really glad that you were able to do the show last week and, make sure something happened. And then, we got tonight going, and we'll hopefully be back again next week.
Yes.
Yep. I'm trying to plan another interview with a lawyer from the National Wildlife Foundation to talk about challenges to the Environmental Protection Act. So that's going to be a serious one. And Blair, if you want to join for that, I think it's going to be a daytime.
Okay.
like noon kind of thing. So
great.
I'm working on
if
that.
If it's a Monday or a Thursday, I can probably do that.
Awesome. Yeah. You're like, really? Yeah. I mean, it's right up your wheelhouse, but I want to have these conversations, everybody. I think more and more of these conversations need to happen. Mm-hmm. So good night.
Sleep tight, everyone.
Oh my God. Say good night, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Kiki.
Good night, Kiki. Good night, everyone. Have as great a week as you can. Take every moment as the moment that it is. Every day, try and take a moment of gratitude for whatever it is in your life that you have gratitude for. And stay curious. Don't stop asking questions. Mm-hmm. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And stay lucky. We'll see you next week. Good night. Thank you for joining us.